Hello, this is Mrs. Bradley. Today's revision session is on Paper 1, Question 5 and Creative Writing. You don't have to watch the whole session all in one go. You can pause it, have a break, eat your tea, have a wee and then come back to it, or you can do it in one go. At any point, if you want to be making notes or you think I'd like to try that, hit the pause button and then play me again when you're ready. So what does the exam look like? So this is Paper 1. This is the fiction paper. And you're going to get one fiction source and the exam is 1 hour and 45 minutes. There are 5 questions. Question 1, 2, 3 and 4 are part of the reading aspect of the exam, which is section A, worth 40 marks, and creative writing is section B, and that's worth 40 marks alone. So one question here is worth as many marks as questions 1, 2, 3 and 4 in section A. So what is the question? This is the creative writing question. You're going to be given a choice of 2 tasks, and it is a choice. You choose one. One is usually an image for you to describe. The other is often a narrative task for you to produce a story or part of a story. It doesn't matter if you merge the styles of writing, narrative and description. So this is an example of what it would look like. It advises you to spend 45 minutes at the start and write in full sentences, and you're reminded of the need to plan. You absolutely should plan your answer, and you should leave yourself some time at the end. So maybe have sort of 5 minutes planning, 35 minutes or so to write, and then 5 minutes at the end to read back through. And you'll be given a choice. One will be a description inspired by a story, and the other one might be a story opening, or write a story where something happens, or write a story with a particular title. So what do we need to do in order to be successful at question 5? The number one priority for you when writing this exam response is clarity. If you don't make sure that your writing is clear throughout, you will not access level 3 or higher on the mark scheme. That means you're unlikely to get anything above a grade 4. So in order to pass this exam and pass your GCSE, your writing must be clear. And that's why we advise you, or even implore you, to leave 5 minutes at the end to proofread your work. It's not something we're just saying just for saying's sake. If it isn't clear, it doesn't matter what goes on in that story, how many devices you use, the words you use, it really doesn't matter, because you're not going to hit those sort of level 3, level 4 mark scheme and get the grades you want. So what else gets you marking for creative writing? So we know that it's clarity, but what else do we get marks for? Well, structure. You've got to use paragraphs, and you've got to think about a particular structural technique that you want to use, and we'll talk about that in today's session. Language features. Try and use some zoomorphisms, some similes, metaphors, anaphora. Some ambitious vocabulary. Keep it as varied as possible, but only words that you know you're using correctly. Don't try and use every big word you've ever been taught. It's really jarring and awkward. Punctuation. Try and use a range, so some full stops, some commas, question marks, speech marks, exclamation marks, ellipsis, colons, semicolons. But apart from the basic things, so we're going to capital letter, full stops, commas, apostrophes. We're going to do that as a matter of course. But anything that you're doing for effect, colon, semicolon, ellipsis, use them once or twice. That'll be enough. And then finally, sentence structures. Vary your sentence structures, focusing particularly on the use of a simple or minor sentence at critical moments in your writing. In fact, that simple or minor sentence could be a paragraph on its own. Now we're going to have a look at the difference between what makes a level 3 and a level 4. So for a level 3, which is sort of grade 5, 6, 7, sometimes a low 7, sometimes a high level 4. Grade 4, sorry. So for level 3, you're going to use paragraphs that are logical. It's going to be an easy to follow description or story. Mostly accurate spelling and punctuation, not all of it, but mostly, particularly the basics, are going to be correct. You're going to choose words that you're going to include a word that the examiner's going to think they've chosen that for a particular reason. It's not your average everyday conversational word. It's quite interesting, like I'm interested in parts. It's consistent, you know, if you're writing from I, it's I throughout. If you're writing from third person, if it's all very detached, it's very consistent all the way through. You're going to vary sentences for effect. You're going to use language features, metaphor, similes, personification for effect. And they're credible, so it fits the writing. And you're going to draw readers' attention to detail and begin to write a lot about a little. So you might spend a good paragraph just describing a tree, for example. So rather than just saying there's a tree, you're going to write a lot about a little. You're going to write a lot about that tree. Now for level 4, which is sort of grade 8, grade 9, high grade 7, again depending on grade boundaries, you're going to make a conscious decision about structure. You're going to have thought about it and you're going to be employing it. You're going to use language features in a way that's really interesting and effective and maybe a little original. You might use time shifts, you might have a flashback, or you might have a perspective shift with confidence. The words that you use and the sentences that you're using are going to be consciously crafted throughout. Every word thought for a particular purpose. It's going to be really fluent. It's going to be varied sentences that feel unforced and like they're meant to be there. And it's going to be consistently engaging and can move between tiny things describing a leaf to really big things describing the sky. So what's the difference between them? Well, if you look at the first level 3, your paragraphs are connected and they're logical. And if we compare that to grade 8 or 9 in level 4, they're not just logical, but they're really conscious and they're really effective. If you have a look at grade level 3, we've got a consistent viewpoint, varied structural sentences, language features, all used for effect. But if you look over at grade 4, they're not just used for effect, they're really interesting, they're really confident, they're really engaging. You're going to use wider vocabulary in level 4, but you're going to use really ambitious and consciously crafted vocabulary at level 4. For level 3, it's going to be really easy to follow. For level 4, it's going to be really fluent. Level 3, it's going to be interesting in some parts. Level 4, consistently interesting, consistently engaging. For level 3, you're going to draw the reader's attention to little things, write a lot about a little, but for level 4, you're going to move from the big things to the little things and back again. So, how do you structure it? So it's not just about writing in paragraphs. You absolutely have to describe the image or part of it, but your writing does not need to be centred around it. If it's a picture of a lighthouse, you do not just need to describe a lighthouse. You could almost have something in mind that you want to describe, and then you apply that to the lighthouse image that's in front of you. So the description of the image can be part of your creative writing. It doesn't need to be centred on it. We have different structural choices that we recommend, and you should go into the exam knowing which one of these you're going to use, but there's 2 that we've specifically spent some time on, and that's the countdown and battle of the seasons. But you could also use a cyclical structure, an extended metaphor, sky to floor, or a linking device, and I'm going to go through these now. The countdown is what we spent some time in year 10 on, and they are 5 paragraphs where you hook the reader with the introduction of a countdown. You have the beginning of the journey, a weather paragraph, a flashback as to why you're travelling, and you arrive at the place. And somewhere within that, you'll describe the image, and it'll be rooted in the image. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video for a moment and just read that description. And that gives you an example, a taster of what the first paragraph of the countdown might look like. I'd like you to try it. So have a look at this image. Imagine this was your exam picture. Jot me down 5 paragraphs, a plan of what you would do using the countdown structure. Pause the video now. Another way you can do this is the battle of the seasons, and we've spoke about this in lesson, where you personify the weather and force them to have a battle. Here's an example of a description that starts with the snow, and the snow in this description wants to cover everything and it wants to kill everything. As this piece of writing would progress, slowly, spring, nature, warmth, the sun would creep in, they'd have a battle, and the sun would win by the end. Just pause the video for a moment and see how I've personified the snow here and how it seems like a menacing force about to start a battle. Okay, now you try. If this was your image, and I want you to think about Battle of the Seasons as your structural choice, what would your 5 paragraphs be? Plan that now. Another way that you can structure your work is using a cyclical structure. So here's an example. You pick something to really describe, maybe the main thing in the image, for example, the bridge. Then your second paragraph describes something else, character. Your third paragraph describes a third thing, for example, another character, but it could be a dog, pond, car, sorry. Then you describe the fourth thing, and if you haven't described the sky, it might be worth doing that here. And then you return back to whatever you described in your first paragraph, but you make a change. For example, here, it would be the bridge again. Think about this image. Imagine this was your exam picture. If you were to employ the cyclical structure, what 5 paragraphs would you plan? What would you focus on to begin with? What other sort of 3 or 4 things would you describe? And then finally, what would you go back to and how would you change it, make it really impactful? A nice easy one I find, so if you find descriptive writing difficult, this is a nice easy one. And this is basically where you start at the sky, you move down in little chunks down to the floor, and then you go back to the sky again. So the first paragraph will be the sky. The second paragraph will be something at building level, so in this example it would be the trees. Your third paragraph, you zoom in on something and describe it, so a character or an object. In this instance it might be the football goals. Then you describe something on the floor, so in this instance it might be the leaves. And then your fifth paragraph, you go back to the sky, but you change it. So for example, if it's really positive in the beginning, it's going to be really negative at the end. If the sky is really negative and bad at the beginning, it's going to be brilliant by the end. Have a look at this image. Imagine this was your exam question. What 5 paragraphs would you plan if you were going to use the sky to floor and back again structure? Pause the video now. Okay. One of our final devices is a linking device. And you could really apply this to any of the structural features that we've spoken about so far. So if you like it, it can be applied to any of the structural features. And that is where, in this instance, you would describe something. So I would describe the boy and the ball. I need to describe something in the first paragraph that moves. And at the end of that paragraph, the ball's going to bounce and it's going to land in a puddle. Then I'm going to describe the landscape. I'm going to describe the puddle. I'm going to describe the grass. Then potentially, I don't know, the wind might blow and it's going to blow the ball towards a player, and my third paragraph is going to be describing the player. Now the player kicks the ball in the air, and in my fourth paragraph I'm going to describe the sky. Then my fifth paragraph, the ball bounces back down towards the goal where the boy that I mentioned originally picks it up again. So you can see that something that moves makes and connects all the paragraphs together. And you can also see that I've done a sort of cyclical structure here as well. This linking device can be applied to anything. Have a think about this image here and think about what could move in this image that would prove to be a really effective structural device. And plan your 5 paragraphs now. Pause the video. Finally, if you find descriptive writing easy, you're very good at it, you've always been very good at it, maybe you're in a top set, you could try an extended metaphor. Now, an extended metaphor, if you think about a metaphor, it's when you describe something as something it can't be. So an extended metaphor is when a metaphor extends over the course of multiple lines or even paragraphs. And how you do it is you decide what your extended metaphor is going to be. So it's going to be the sun, for example. You write down a list of words that are connected with that metaphor. You write a single metaphor in the first paragraph. And now you use words from your list and you continue your writing, extending the metaphor as you go. An example that I've included here on this slide is the sun's rays slipped through her fingers, illuminating her hands from wrist to nails. She breathed in and out to capture the moment of pure bliss. Looking up, she noticed the sun had begun to hide behind the cloud. She hoped things wouldn't take a turn for the worse. This football match had to happen today. A golden coin was flipped and the orb returned. So you can see here that I've got this extended metaphor of the sun that's in orange, and it extends over a number of lines. Now on the slide here you can see these are common extended metaphors, so the moon, plants, circus, rain. You can read them for yourself. Have a go. If you like creative writing and you think you'd fancy a challenge, pause the video now, have a look at that list and try and think, okay, I'm going to choose my extended metaphor, list of words that are connected. I'm going to start with a single metaphor. Now I'm going to describe something and I'm just going to let it continue. So if you fancy that, if it feels like a good challenge to you, have a go now. If it feels like too much, think about the devices, structural devices that I've shown you so far, and pick one you feel comfortable with. Now, have a look at this picture. Take a moment to really look at the detail. Imagine this was your exam response. It would say, write a description suggested by this picture, or it might say, write a short story with the title, The Quiet Town. I want you to think of all of the different ways we've said that we can structure a narrative or a description, and I want you to pick the one that you feel most comfortable with and jot me down a 5 paragraph plan now. Pause the video. Okay, so here are two examples of what this might look like. I want you to pause the video for a moment, read through the two examples and think, what do these examples do well? What don't they do so well? These are examples of a student's response in relation to the picture we've just looked at. Pause the paper now. Okay. On the next slide, there's an image. Let's imagine that this image was your stimulus. How could you apply the words and phrases that you've just looked at in that last slide to this image? Have a go. And finally, I want you to decide now which structural plan you plan on using. Is it the countdown, the battle of the seasons, cyclical, extended metaphor, sky to floor, linking device, a couple of them merged together? Which did you like and do you feel the most comfortable with? You should know this before you enter your exam. You can plan most of your paragraphs and then on the day you add in the image and describe that too. Over the next few slides, there are some sample exam responses. I want you to spend 5 minutes on each slide, planning your exam response, thinking what 5 paragraphs would I do if this image came up in relation to which structural feature you've chosen. So I shall say that again. Pick which structural feature you like from that list that you think would be accessible for you to do. And then look at the images on the next few slides and think, okay, how would I apply that structural feature to this image? How would I apply this structural feature to this image? Have a look at this image, pause the video now, think about which structural feature you've chosen and jot me down a 5-minute plan, 5 paragraphs. Let's try it again. Imagine this was your image. Write a description suggested by this image. Write a short story that begins with a sentence. Suddenly I heard it. It was coming from the other side of the passage. So one of those exam responses. Pick one. Spend 5 minutes using the structural device that you've chosen and plan a 5-minute paragraph. And finally, write a description as suggested by this picture. or write a short story that begins with the sentence, "It was a disaster. I didn't know what to do." Pick one of the structural features. You should have picked it already. Spend 5 minutes writing a 5-paragraph plan.